The anti-gun crowd says you're paranoid if you think that their supposedly reasonable gun regulations will create a slippery slope to gun confiscation. But you're not paranoid. The slippery slope is very real and very steep. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, and member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. If you haven't subscribed to the Four Boxes Diner, please do so and show that you support the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. The anti-gun lobby in the United States likes to make comments like slippery slope arguments are simply about scaring paranoid extremists, people like, frankly, you and me, right? You see, every time a gun proposal is made in the eyes of the anti-gun lobby, they say, this is reasonable. This is just common sense. Anyone who thinks this is a slippery slope or the next step toward gun confiscation in the United States is simply crazy. It's one of the NRA's biggest lies. Or, contrary to the claims of what some gun rights proponents have suggested, this hasn't been the first step in some slippery slope to mass confiscation. That was what Barack Obama said. But the reality is, we know that every single act of gun control is another step toward gun confiscation. And if the anti-gunners had their way, they would take away all of our guns. Now, do you think I'm being paranoid? I don't think so. Let's look at what happened in the year 1995, which, by the way, is 1 year after the so-called assault weapon ban of 1994. California Senator Dianne Feinstein said, again, this is what she told 60 Minutes, that she would have gone for and voted for an outright ban on guns if she could have gotten the votes in the Senate. This is what she said, not my language, hers. If she could have said, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them in, she would have voted for that and supported it. That's a prominent senator even today from California. The second thing to keep in mind is, as we're speaking now, the United States Senate is trying to reach a so-called bipartisan framework on restrictive new gun laws. But I wanted to show you how the anti-gunners think. Let's just look at one statement from New Jersey anti-gun governor Phil Murphy. He released a statement when it was announced there was a bipartisan agreement to agree. That's what the framework was. It's an agreement to agree. It's not an agreement. It's just an agreement to agree. Okay? This is what Governor Murphy said. He said, quote, "The door has opened. We must open it wider." I repeat, Governor Murphy of New Jersey said that with that Senate compromise bill, bipartisan bill on gun control, the door has opened. We must open it wider. Why would he say that unless he wants more and more gun control until he gets the gun confiscation? Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I'm sure you've seen on TV on MSNBC and other networks, this is what she said about the framework for gun control in the U.S. Senate. "This is only the beginning. It has to be only the beginning, not the end." Why would she say that? Because, again, they want more and more gun control until they take away our guns. This is all you need to know. This is what it really means. They want to take away our guns. This is not baseless speculation or scaremongering. That's not what this is about. If you look at the state of New Jersey, let's take that as an example. In 1990, New Jersey became the first state to ban so-called large capacity magazines, which frankly are just standard capacity, commonly possessed magazines. And what exactly was a large capacity magazine back then? Well then, again 1990, New Jersey defined it as an ammunition feeding device that could hold more than 15 rounds. Oh wait, what happened in 2018? Well, guess what? In 2018, New Jersey lowered the maximum capacity down to 10 rounds. So first of all, large capacity magazines, according to New Jersey, was 15 rounds in 1990. Now it's down to 10 rounds. And New Jersey is not the only state that has slid down this slippery slope. Hawaii and Maryland both started out with 20 rounds, meaning the max you could have in your magazine. But they both later lowered the limit to 10 rounds. New York State, same concept. They banned so-called large capacity magazines, again, standard capacity magazines in the real world, but not in the propaganda world of the left. But of course, that had to have 10 rounds from the start. But then in 2013, the governor of New York, that would be Andrew Cuomo at the time, he ran through a sweeping new anti-gun law that lowered the maximum capacity in a magazine to 7 rounds. That was part of the SAFE Act. You probably remember that. There was only one problem, as Governor Cuomo was forced to admit later, after the law passed. There is no such thing as a 7-bullet magazine. It doesn't exist. Now, that's not entirely technically true. Of course, they do exist for some calibers, but generally speaking, 7-round magazines, unless you're dealing with like a mini caliber, minigun, a concealed carry type gun, pocket pistol, they generally don't exist for sort of standard capacity or standard commonly sized 9 millimeters. The reality is that then Governor Cuomo and his anti-gun allies restored the 10-round maximum capacity, but then they made it illegal to load more than 7 rounds. But good news is in that situation, one of the courts in New York later ruled that this was ridiculous, this load limit was unconstitutional, and it was struck down. But keep this in mind. Whether it be California and New York included a grandfather provisions to allow magazines that people owned before the laws went into effect. And again, what a grandfather clause is in a law, it says, hey, we're going to ban all magazines with more than 10 rounds going forward. But if you have one already at the time the law becomes effective, you can keep it. You've been grandfathered. That's a grandfather clause. But of course, what happened? California and New York had these grandfather clause when it came to so-called large capacity magazines. Today, they've all been eliminated. Why is that? Because the slippery slope toward more and more gun control laws is true and real. In fact, even the federal government went down the slippery slope line that you need to be aware of. The 1994 federal assault weapons ban prohibited magazines that held more than 10 rounds. But when the ban was originally proposed in 1990, just 4 years earlier, the maximum capacity for that so-called large capacity magazine was not 10 rounds, but was 15 rounds. So in 4 years, even in the federal government, it went from 15 rounds down to 10. So various jurisdictions have defined a large capacity magazine as holding as many as 20 rounds and as few as 7 rounds. Do you see why this makes the slippery slope so slippery? These numbers are completely arbitrary. Why should they cap it at 7 rounds and not 10 or 15 or 20 or for that matter 5, 2, or 1? I mean, why can't they? If you can limit the number of rounds in a magazine, why can't they just tell us we can only have a single shotgun? Now I want you to look north. I think this is another great lesson that people don't talk about, is the slippery slope toward more and more gun control in the country of Canada. Now, we know that Canada is not America. Canada is where all the Tories who lost the American Revolution, who supported the British, the Tories were the people that supported the British against the American colonists. The Tories, when they lost the American Revolution, they all skedaddled to Canada. So, and Canada, by the way, is still part of Queen Elizabeth's kingdom. So the Canadians are still monarch types, and Americans are certainly not that. So I understand the Canadians are not exactly analogous to Americans, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned for American gun owners from what happened in Canada. In 1934 in Canada, for example, it required that all handguns to be registered. Then in 1938 in Canada, it made people re-register their handguns every 5 years. Again, more gun control. In 1951, Canada created a centralized registry for restricted firearms. In 1977 in Canada, they banned automatic weapons and sawed-off shotguns and rifles. They required Canadians to go through a screening process to get a license to buy any guns or ammunition and empowered the government to seize weapons. Then in 1993 in Canada, prohibited magazines that held more than 5 rounds for semi-automatic rifles and shotguns and banned magazines that held more than 10 rounds for handguns. In 1995, it mandated a national registry for all weapons, required background checks, and put controls on ammunition sales. In 2018 in Canada, it required firearms sellers to keep records and strengthen screening provisions. In 2020, without going through the legislature, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the government was banning more than 1,500 models of semi-automatic rifles. And now in 2022, Canada is pushing legislation to ban handgun sales, which will pass, and to ban possession of semi-automatics through a government buyback program, which of course is just theft at the end of the day, right? So when it comes to gun control, the slope is very darn slippery. The anti-gunners want to take our guns, and they want to use every step. There is no such thing to common sense gun safety regulations when it comes to the anti-gunners. It's just the next step down the path toward making America Australia or making America Venezuela, where none of us have guns. We are no longer American citizens entitled to the right to bear arms, but we are simply serfs. We are simply subjects. That is not the American dream. That is not what the Constitution provides, but that is where every step of gun control in America. So the point is, do not allow the anti-gunners to have a single step down the path toward gun control. It will never be the last step until they take our guns. It is not paranoia. It is not crazy. It is based in history. Just look at what happened in Canada and these various states that we've just discussed. Giving up gun control only gives rise to more and more gun control. Okay, I hope you learned something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we'll see you again soon here At the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.